What's up, black community? How's it going? We're having a round two, or as many fucking rounds as it takes. I've kind of got more information through channeling as well as conversations that led to more synchronicities and such. And you know what? I've spotted various things that could literally help with this, with the aspect of when it comes to black community still being stuck in the mind, and it's not just black community. It's a when it comes to being stuck in the mind, it's a universal thing that can. I just see a lot of people are still stuck in the mind, or a decent amount of people, mass wise, are still stuck in the mind, reacting to whatever this little computer, so ones and zeros and sets of value, does. Yet there are certain, let's say, weights, or better said, there are certain specific characteristics. It's like the weights are on everyone when it comes to being stuck in the mind, but there's certain specific characteristics that, when it comes to the black community, African Americans, that we that kind of keeps us in a loop, in a or easier, that are kind of keeping us, that kind of has an easier time keeping us in a loop, which keeps us stuck in the mind and not branching out in getting into that aspect of consciousness and universal consciousness, and getting into that deeper aspect of things, or even giving it a shot. So while channeling, I kind of focused on that, trying to understand that, trying to get more of that. And funny enough, bits of information kind of came, but then more synchronicities, chance meetings happened the last few days to have more explanation on certain things, kind of like background as well, to kind of like make it easier to see what kind of gets us stuck. Oftentimes, I say us, but what kind of gets the community and people in general, but mostly in this aspect, the black community often stuck in the aspect of being in the mind and not wanting to branch out. And that's aside from religion. Now we're jumping into kind of like tricky subconscious blockers that are linked to much further back. But then there's a beautiful little trap that happens when you look much further back, and this is what it becomes a challenge, an amazing challenge. It becomes a fight if you don't understand how that little trap works. So, and I've explained that trap before, but now there's more explanations on that kind of trap. It's a universal trap, but especially in regards to everything that's been happening, and it's kind of like a repeat of something that happened last year. Like it seems to be a repeating pattern. So the trap is fully active. It's not an active, I'm gonna trap you. It's basically, if you don't pay attention to it, you fall into that trap, and boom, you're right back into the loop, and you're back into double thinking or double speaking. I accept this all, but fuck you. That kind of stuff. So here we go. When it comes to our parenting, because that is a key thing to this early subconscious blocker, and it is also a key thing when it comes to a double-edged trap. When it comes to the parenting and how it was done, and here's your really rough introduction to non-duality. We have to point at it and look at it clearly, take off the shades, or the aspect of, that tendency of calling our mothers queen in that aspect, or having this kind of glorification that kind of happened, or glorification of the dad as well. Like this, the way that we kind of put them on pedestal, even though there's an aspect that they treated us. Well, we kind of have to look at this and tear it down, but at the same time, we don't. We kind of have to look at the parenting in general and the aspect of why it was that way, and we kind of have to finger point at why it came to that way, and we kind of don't. It's a balance between doing both in various nuances, and this is where you kind of want to take the time to pay attention to this understanding, because oftentimes when it comes to the reactionary aspect that we have, we don't necessarily pay time to listen to what the emotion is and the logic behind the emotion or what led to that, and then we just react and it becomes normal. Just like when it came to our parents reacting whenever we would do something that was deemed wrong from their mind based on the granularity of their experience, but it does not mean that it was. Because at the same time, and this is where non-duality becomes your best friend, as a kid, you were learning by trying things, yet they did not understand that this was the process, the physical process of learning. They did not understand that the old method of repetition, 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 and straight, direct, pinpoint repetition for this aspect of homeschooling or schooling or just being able to. It's kind of like they understood schooling as blunt repetition instead of the schooling of life, which is a repetition that will allow you to kind of like get this sensation, this manual sensation of improvement the more you repeat. It is not this aspect of 1 plus 1 equals 2, 2 plus 2 equals 4, 4 plus 4 equals 8, that blunt repetition, which was post World War II thinking in the aspect of schooling. Yet shit evolved drastically now. So upon that being understood, the reaction of yelling at a kid for not understanding wipes out. It is not needed. It is not necessary. But here's non-duality kicking your butt again. It was necessary for you to get to this video to understand that concept and various other things within yourself. But that's going to be later on. Plus, you'll have your own understandings of it. My personal understanding of it, based on my granularity of it, is if it wasn't like the beatings, the yelling were unnecessary at a time, because my growth due to that was halted by subconscious patches that were left based on that parenting being considered normal. So the repetition of that was normalizing verbal abuse, normalizing physical abuse, normalizing gossip, which all keeps you in the mind because of those subconscious blockers that are created and will and when you say subconscious blocker, or when I say subconscious blockers, you can also see them as blinders, because you do not see how this is not normal. This behavior is not normal. Just like the reacting, they did not see that their reacting behavior to you learning was not normal, because they have perpetually lived it with their parents, who perpetually lived it with their parents, who perpetually lived it from their parents. You can see the chain? And now this is where you kind of unlock a bit of the trap, okay? One of the two of that double-edged trap, okay? Because here's the thing. When you start looking at this and you start understanding that subconscious aspect and the way that you've been learned, do not fall for that initial trap of getting angry at your parents. Because it will be normal, as the brain will go, oh shit, I've missed out on the opportunity. And again, I say the brain. I've missed out on these opportunities because of blah, blah, blah subconscious, or I can't believe I lived this way because of blah, blah, blah. And then it'll look back and go, well, fuck them. An aspect of anger comes up naturally. And that's not just a black community thing. You'll see, you can check out some certain Tony Robbins interventions and other videos like that. You'll see it's not just a black community thing. But that is first trap. Do not go back and look at your parents and go, well, fuck off. Because they didn't know what they didn't know. Remember the blinder aspect of it subconsciously? It's just like, in a way, compare it a bit to anorexia or bulimia. It's a mind blinder, a mind pattern, a mind 1 or 0 that keeps you from seeing that the behavior is not normal. Okay? And as well as, I don't want to make fun of religion, but like the irony of, going to church and then immediately going against what you've been taught. Or it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to follow and praise Jesus. I even have other ethnicity friends that do that too. So they fall for that trap as well. But it's like, oh, I'm going to praise Jesus, but fuck this guy. And it's like, what did Jesus just just teach you? That kind of behavior. And it's blinders. It's literally blinders, because when you actively take the time to go, well, wait a minute, we've just spent an hour in church talking about how we're supposed to unite and come together, but then all that's thrown aside when some piece of news or some piece of gossip kind of comes in. And it's like, as a kid, I had that experience a couple of times with my mom, but then it became kind of like, oh, okay. Because honor your parents, right? We were subconsciously bombarded with honor thy father and mother. Do not talk back against them, or what? And can you start noticing those subconscious patterns, right? Can you start noticing those little subconscious blinders and what they can create? Because it's not just these specific examples. They can just expand onto multiple things. But at least looking at them at the core helps you. So you don't fall back into the trap of blaming your parents because they didn't know what they didn't know and they had those blinders. So are you going to fall back into that same trap? Fuck no. You understand what happened and where it comes from. Now let's go for the second trap. And that's the insidious one. You see, you're going between multiple traps, but you got this. You fucking got this, okay? The second trap happens when you go back all the way and you see where your parents picked it up. And this is where some people are going to have to pause the video and go internally to wash that out. Because the second trap is what's often keeping people stuck in that loop. Okay? The beatings, that whole habit, when you get to its original point, okay? It does come from slavery. It does. There's also another trap of the mind, that's the mistrust within various communities, and the hate, and within the community, the mistrust of one another at certain times, but which also kind of comes back to that. Now, how this is one of the most insidious traps for you to stay stuck in the mind, in the identity, in the labeling of yourself with your color, okay, is that when you think and refer back to racism, you are referring it back to that time's level of consciousness. Now let's pick up that bubble. Level of consciousness, a rough way to explain it is like saying, noticing that rights have been given throughout the years, okay, throughout the years of history. Noticing that more and more encompassment or inclusion has been created over years, and rapidly in the last few years when you think about it, okay? Because you want to go back to ancient time and remember, we were warring over cities and kingdoms, and oh, how dare you not marry my daughter, I will go to war with your kingdom. That was a level of consciousness, remember, we're not that far away from the duels, the Wild West duels, or, oh, your opinion on a journal, on this printed journal, does not fit what I like. I challenge you to a duel at sunrise. You would lose your life for an opinion on a daily and maybe monthly base. Didn't live that time. It was a big thing at that time, but I didn't live there to tell you how often. I mean, to make a comparison to TMZ or the people shooting each other, or the incident, the Kool-Aid incident, one kid shooting another because what was it, the argument of who makes the best Kool-Aid? That kind of stuff, or whatever Tommy Sotomayor shows on his channel, that kind of level of consciousness, was 10 to 20 50, 100 times fold worse prior. We have greatly expanded consciousness. Yet when you refer to racism by that time's consciousness, you're still attempting to emulate that time's feeling in your mind with the imagery that you're being broadcasted about what happened at that time. That is a trap. It is the same trap as memory, because it all becomes an aspect of imagination and guessing. You did not live at that time. You did not. Whoever lived at that time lived what they lived, created a ripple effect that led to you right now living your current present moment with this technology, with this amount of knowledge, this available amount of knowledge, especially now that you have online. Okay? So doing that, reliving it, rethinking about it, bring that up with the same level of consciousness as then, with the same emulated feeling. You know, if you're going to go back and watch those movies, again, movies talking about that, programming, because you are not living it right now, yet you are feeling an emulation of what it would be to live it based off description and media that is depicting what happened then, but is not exactly what is happening then. The difference between your current, present experience and your imagination being hijacked and played with to keep in that mindset and bring it back, you know, whenever that word pops up, brings it back to that mindset. Okay, it's a very subtle little mind trick. It's a bit like neurolinguistic programming in a way as well, used negatively, non-intentionally, or is it? Again, non-duality. All right, yet here's what kind of happens when you fall for that trap. You associate whatever is part of that event with the same level of consciousness, with the same habits, with the same behaviors, because the mind links it up. It's easy. It's quite fast to link it up that way. So you're acting upon that level of consciousness, in this level of consciousness, onto people that have nothing to do and were not there at that point in time in consciousness. This is kind of equivalent to, let's say you've done something that you don't necessarily feel too good about, like early on in your life at 8 or 6. Let's say you punched someone, and basically you kind of had an imbalance, okay, and you just punched someone, okay, you were stuck in the mind and you just reacted, and then bam, you punch someone, or you did something worse, okay? But then 30 years later, okay, that person still holds it against you. It's a trap, because you've changed in 30 years. The granularity of your experience and context is much different in 30 years than the way you reacted then. For all that person knows or not, doesn't know, but, well, doesn't know because they kind of came at you 30 years later. But for all that person knows, you may have changed. It is similar to, let's say, a murderer goes to prison when he's 20, okay? But then for 20 years, let's say 20 years later or 25 years later, goes out. That person has changed. So the victim, the family of the victim, cannot come at this person again, cannot morally come at this person again, because that person has changed. Because to do so is to indirectly repeat an idea that this person has not changed and push it onto this person. Pay specific attention to push it onto this person by repeating at that point in time in consciousness, you did that, you did that, you did that, you did that. Okay? And depending on the person's of either being in the mind or not being in the mind, the percentage of that, okay, which also has some factors in, one's own confidence and kind of sticking to their ground. Depending on that factor, there's a potential, there's a percentage that you can have that person feel again that they are still tied to that when they had moved on and changed. This is the trap of memory and the elastic effect that you kind of create. Because again, the people here in this level of consciousness have nothing to do with the slavery that happened then. Different people, they did not live it as the people that created it. They did not. Yet if you keep pushing it upon them, you add the guilt to it. To those, especially those that have good intentions and want to have more inclusion, thus will accept that label that is unfairly given to them. Can you see history repeating itself from a different point of view? Because slavery initially was a set of group within a level of consciousness that did not have this understanding of not being the mind. The mind's still stuck in survival, extreme survival at that time. So, okay, to be utterly in survival, I need to stick with my group, my own group. I have to watch out for the different, the other, and I have to push my superiority, because at that time, similar to this time, but not to the same level, okay? So now it's, let's say, call it mid-level. Back then, this aspect of honor, glory, identity, title had to be, it was a must, or else you were not part of the bourgeoisie, or else you were not necessarily living well. Can you understand a bit of the toxic soup that was happening there, which pushed some of these explorers, again, prior level of consciousness, you could kind of call it low level of consciousness, but it'll rise infinitely. So saying it low may kind of help or may not, okay? Low level of consciousness. Well, I need to dominate. It's still prominently stuck in that aspect of domination. So I'm going to take that group and make them feel inferior because of the mind. It's like, it's rightfully mine to get my title. I'm an explorer, I am a conqueror, I have all this backup with my country, which ironically you can see in history, many countries that still had this mindset conflicted, because if I think I'm the most powerful and the most conquering, and then someone else kind of comes in, well, buddy, I need my conquering status. I'm in the mind. It's me. It's my identity. I'm a conqueror. Fuck you for saying that you're also a conqueror. I'm a conqueror. Let's fight. You see the pointless wars and skirmish that was started, and the kind of mindset that was at that point. Okay? To a heightened level. Remember, stuck in the mind was at a heightened level at that point, because we did not necessarily have all these understandings, sharing of information, interconnection. We did not have it to this level. Today, this year is a terrific fucking time to get those interconnecting understandings and clear yourself out of the mind, not to stay in those loops, because then you're repeating history, which will naturally cause a similar kind of elastic band effect of, if you're going to be pointing out at the people that had nothing to do with that or aren't even involved in your context, whatever it is, whether it be that old level of consciousness that you're trying to put onto them, or a current event that, because of activist group or social media or media in general, blindly labeling another group, doesn't matter group, whites, black, blah 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 blah, it doesn't fucking matter, blindly labeling it as a mass, which pushes people that are stuck in the mind and want to fight and react to fall into the trap of accusing a mass, or even worse, attacking a mass, both mentally and physically, which has nothing to do with that, but now you're running that coin toss, that percentage chance of triggering a person that, again, had nothing to do with that, but will kind of go, oh, well, I'm being labeled for something I didn't do, and it's my first encounter with this kind of group. Fuck you. You know, there is a swing and a momentum, an elastic band effect that kind of happens, where you can literally change someone's perception of an ethnicity or in a group to a degree where they're stuck in the mind simply by doing that. So you actively create your own enemy, and you've done it simply by continuously focusing on that point in time in consciousness in relationship to now. Okay? While the entire issue, and which is why I say it is not simply a black community thing, it is a human, it is an earth issue to be stuck in the mind when it comes to analyzing things in our lives. Because if you take the time to look at it, what is racism? Exactly what I pointed out. Ones and zeros in the mind that will affect your reaction or response to someone else, based on how the mind filters what that ethnicity is, which is also, you know, how it filters is based on the granularity of details that it is ingested from past environment, media, influences, friends, you know, everything that's kind of ingested, but not necessarily cross-check and cross-reference. Which is why as soon as you move out of one ideology, one group, one religion, one doctrine, one method of practice, as soon as you move out of that thinking, you expand rapidly, because you're able to see, oh wait, that ones and zero in the mind, that's false. Not all of these people are like that. Not all of that people are like that, which is the exact same trap that happens with political parties. Stuck in the mind, ones and zeros. Oh, if you're not this, one, reaction. If you're this, zero. Everything is fine. You know, it's the exact same trap, just on different levels and with different layers of double traps, kind of like what I brought up with the whole parenting and then racism aspect when it comes to the black community. But it's all this same trap of being stuck in the mind. It's similar to one thing that our parents may have a hard time to deal with is this aspect of accepting more affection and showing more affection because of the way they were treated. And you can kind of notice that when you try to go into deeper feeling conversations, because again, they didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't have access to all this technology. And when it comes to understanding how to balance both feeling and logic, okay, the feminine and the masculine, they may not have access to that technique. So when it comes to locating a feeling in order to understand it logically, to like having a feeling and then pausing to understand it logically, okay, they didn't pay attention to that, which is why oftentimes reaction. Oftentimes they weren't necessarily trained to pause and pay attention to identify what the feeling is and why it repeats. Or another thing that can also happen, and I think that's more of an imbalance of the feminine energy compared to missing out on that logic, the pause, is you may have an emotion and understand what it is, but not understand the logic that you can take it out. So the emotion is repeated, acknowledged as it is a reaction from something else, but it's not necessarily acknowledged that, oh, well, it's a mind thing and it's a repetition, so I can take care of it and repeat something else. Thus, staying stuck in the loop in another way of the reactionary loop, you know, which is why, you know, gossip becomes prominent. It's juicy little material of emotions for a certain degree, but you're not necessarily getting the logic, which is found in understanding the momentum of thought leading to emotions, leading to actions, leading to situation that created the gossip. Because when you understand that with your own self, what led you to think certain way, what kind of momentums you had in your life, you're able to understand, oh right, I didn't fucking choose that. And also I can just tweak this momentum just by changing the thought, changing the repetition of thought, and you skyrocket yourself in a whole different direction. You know, literally, you skyrocket yourself in a whole different momentum. New Game Plus will help you, will show you on that one. The New Game Plus visualization technique will help you on that one. Maybe go back in the first video that I have called You Are Not the Brain, You Are Not the Mind. I speak about it a bit more, and that kind of tells me an idea to make certain lists. But yeah, you'll skyrocket just because you understand that, oh, if I didn't have that kind of thought, or if I understood that thought from a different perspective, with my now current point of consciousness, if I go back and I change the thought slightly and change the momentum, I have a whole different perception on life and understanding. Okay? And that is key for your growth. But to do so, you kind of have to be enough out of the mind to go into these events and go into it in an aspect of non-duality, where it's like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I'll look at both pathways of thought in order to try to get a whole and not stay stuck in the mind that's like, it definitely is, it's got to be this way, it must be like that, this person definitely had that intention, this, you know, the pointing, the finger pointing, right? And you make sure to evade that, because ultimately whatever you hold, it's kind of like resentment. Whenever you hold resentment, whenever you hold that kind of memory, you're still holding it with that point in time's consciousness and that point in time's feeling. So you are repeating the memory of whatever grudge that you are holding, and you're the only one feeling it to that extent, and with whatever visual hijacking that may have been part of that, again and again and again. You're the one feeling that. And if please quickly look at water exercise, quantum physics, memory in the water, and maybe linking that to the Japanese experiment in the water. Whatever feelings that you perpetually repeat in your body anchors and affects your cells, and it causes degeneration. So whatever you hold in resentment, and this goes for everyone, but guys, Black community, let's hammer out of that, okay? Whatever you hold in resentment only affects you in the moment until you take it out onto someone else. But that's a reaction, and it'll affect you karmic-wise as well. But it'll affect you in the moment. Repeat that enough time, repeat those triggers enough time, and you affect your body that way indirectly. Because you affect it and you don't. You affect it in a way that, well, you consciously do it, but you don't consciously do it when you understand the impact of it all, as well as the subconscious programming that often happens directly and indirectly, purposefully and non-purposefully. You know, again, look at those movies and what do you feel? Oh my God, you're feeling a simulation, a representation of those feelings at that point. But this is still you feeling it and reproducing it. It's kind of like saying, why are you eating... I can't go with that. I'm like, why are you eating shit? And it's like, well, in a way it is emotional shit. And you're feeling bad, which affects your cells as well. And also repeating the memory over and over and over keeps you associated and identified to something that you didn't live. Making it normal, casual to repeat this shit feeling with possible, and, you know, depending on the situation, justification, feeling valued, which is another trap of the mind, because I need to feel justified, I need to feel valued, I need to feel part of that group and not feel left, so I'm gonna jump into that willingly to not feel excluded and to feel like, oh, well, this is part of my root, so I need to connect to that, or I need to feel it out. And like with everything, which is why non-duality is your best friend, you do and you don't. You do it in an aspect of knowledge and understanding what kind of points of consciousness were at that point, which helps you understand the ripples in times of actions that are leading us to this current great point in time. Believe me, you're going to spend your own time noticing at the ripples of the actions of various creations that have happened because of that, the back and forth of positive results, negative results from that, some of the other music creations that were created because of that, and amazing stars that were created because of that. Hell, Michael Jackson, because of his father still being stuck in this mindset, Michael Jackson was hammered into a genius. The man could not read a music sheet, beatboxed his beats, his music to create it, and then helped and adjusted it with people that knew how to play instruments. You know, kind of told them, you gotta mix it a bit over here. You know, this is the beat I kind of want. Ooh, ooh. You know, this is the intonation I kind of want. Genius! Okay? But then there's a double-sided effect, and you understand his mental status was, his mental psyche was severely affected by that, because as a kid, getting such pressure, and again that gap 0 to 9 messes with you. It messes with you, but you also understand that because we see both aspects of it, we can choose and say, okay, that dedication, that ferocious dedication can be acquired without the violence and the mental trauma, which will not bring the consequences later on. We're at a point where we can just look at this and go, okay, this happened. We understood where it happens. Here's the advantage. Here's the disadvantage. Let us balance it out and understand how this kind of treatment applies to multiple things, multiple statuses, multiple, not just parenting, but various other things. You know, it's tricky, but we can understand that and then balance it and say, okay, how do we reproduce this without that? You know, what kind of dedication and training without that? And that's evolution. How do we take this event, this technique, this mastery, this incident possibly, and then evolve without the negativity, without the hurt, without the losses, without the unnecessary intensity at this current time in consciousness, because that happened at a previous time in consciousness, right? And then we, guess what? We raise the level of consciousness at that point. We manually raise it when we take that time. And it's so cool! Because at that point, you literally pave the way for your kids, for your grandkids, for the next generation, for humankind as a whole, versus staying stuck in the mind, my identity, my nation, my color, me, stuck in the mind, which does not let you expand your thoughts, which doesn't let you expand your vision of self, which doesn't let you expand your skill set based on the vast sea of knowledge and insights that are out there, okay? Including channeling, which, as you can see, it flows in. So that's kind of as best as I can kind of bring it in the current moment. And of course, just like with any kind of insights and understanding or channeling, more comes, more nuances, more understanding, more distinctions comes. Okay, this is life, which is cool because you are ever eternally growing. You know Saiyans from Dragon Ball? This is humans. Infinite levels of potential and growth when you consider and you balance yourself in this aspect of understanding. And which is why I say I may point this out to the black community, and of course I generally want to help, okay, the black community. I also want to help the world as a grand scale. And this understanding doesn't necessarily apply only to the black community, it applies to the all. Because as I said, staying stuck in the mind, racism, any kind of reactionary habit, distrust of the other, assumptions of the other, all of that is traps of the mind. And that's not just one community aspect of it. It's just that right now, when it comes to black community, the elastic band effect of what happened at that point of time in consciousness is keeping us trapped in this insidious loop. Unintentionally by whoever created that, because they weren't that they weren't that smart. They weren't that smart. It's like saying, oh yeah, they definitely saw 100 years in the future and planned that. No. That's an assumption, and that's part of the trap. I assume that you've done this for negative intention over a large amount of years. Never do that. You're stuck in the trap. You'd assume the same thing with yourself, and you're keeping that feeling over and over and over. Because you're assuming that you're assuming negative intention by default. And that is one of the worst things that will keep you stuck in the mind trap. Because at the same time, the same rule will apply to you in your own mind. That little thing, bit of a double-edged sword, huh? Bit of a double-edged sword, but we got this. We all got this. Meaning, we can make it our own best friend by taking the time. I cannot stress how much taking the time, as little as 10 minutes or 15 minutes every morning and night, to retrospect, introspect, and kind of go, okay, how did I react or how did I respond today? What did I learn? Why did this happen? And also, key thing, use the mirror reflection aspect of it from this other's perspective, from this other person's point of view. Understanding that we were all born with the blank zero hard drive, okay? Which got filled up with our life experience based on our environment, the people that influenced us, the media, okay? That gets filled up. Understanding that we did not choose a majority of our thoughts and expectations and assumptions and all those things that kind of get us to react. We go, Understanding we did not choose. The same goes for everyone else. The same goes for everyone else. Because why would you shoot yourself in the foot? Righteousness and wordiness. But I am bleeding as I walk. Thus, I'm not seeing the other opportunities around. I'm hitting every bump. I'm unfocused. I'm bleeding. So I'm unfocused on my goal. And then eventually, blah, I'm falling down. It's practically like that. You did not... When you think, and this is what happened, when you assume that a negative thought or a negative habit is consciously taken, consciously picked up, this is what you're seeing. Would you do that? No. So don't put it on others, because you don't necessarily want that same thing placed on you. And if someone else places it on you, you can laugh, not feel associated to it, just kind of go, assumptions. I can understand how a person can stay kind of stuck in the mind, and it sucks. I can fully see how anchored certain people are, and it's like, it'll take the time it takes, and there's no need to pointlessly fight back and forth, because it's still you and your output, and you don't necessarily want to output this fight. You're kind of getting sucked into the fight at times. There's an energetic component to that, as well as a subconscious component to that. Another thing that I kind of notice, especially when it comes to subconscious patterns, is, and especially in possibly due to school or maybe kind of linked up to our parenting, this aspect of needing to answer or needing to kind of respond fast. The silence not necessarily being acknowledged and valued, and I guess that would be a whole different chapter to talk about, but it does have an impact on the way that you kind of process informations or have your back and forth. And just taking that time to just value the silence between two people, and listening, but then letting, kind of going in, listening, but then going in and expanding conversations and all. It becomes a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful dance. And you can have this with practically everyone that kind of just get a bit slightly unstuck from the mind. It's fucking great. And oh, also you'll kind of get a feel for the tricky aspect of our language, which has a lot of assumptions. That's another thing when it comes to subconscious programming. That would be another thing to look into, especially when you get fed verbs like should have and all that, ideas like that. Okay, should have is never should exist because, okay, at the time that you had what you had or did what you did not know what you did not know. It's a must understand. You did not know what you did not know. So you took a learning experience, you took a learning step. But if you're gonna be in the habit of going, oh, I should have, there's no should have. You can't. There's no back to the future. You needed that step to understand the next step. You know, and whenever you say should have, why not simply say, okay, well, I've understood from that point that I could just change my attitude. I could just change my mannerism. I could just change my way to tackle on that kind of situation, and then there's another result. So there's no should have. The should have keeps you in this loop of always saying, oh, should have. But nothing gets discovered. Nothing gets understood. Nothing grows. Right? And you didn't know what you didn't know. So leave it. And the people that kind of repeat the same mistakes are kind of efficiently stuck in that same loop. Well, as well as the blinders, too. It gets really nitty gritty and complex, but non-duality makes this your best friend, and accepting the all, the possibility of, the possibility of the all, maybe it happens this way, maybe it doesn't. You're able to kind of cycle through those thoughts without getting snagged by the mind over an identity thing, over a resentment thing, because it's all ones and zeros. It's all being too associated with the mind, which is being too associated with the granularity of experience in your past, which also includes your skin color, whatever identity is presented. So glass, this must be nerdy. Dreads must be Jamaican. And if I kept myself locked into that, I would have the accent, I would be a bit more into the brainy aspect. Can you kind of see what the difference gets to be? This is what gets to be key, and you moving out of that trap and into being able to create whatever you want, because your aspect of focus no longer has a looming enemy, which is the trap of the mind. Your focus remains consistently on what you want to create, kind of like Michael Jackson, but without the pressure that was held of you must fucking perform or you ain't gonna eat, and you may not even have a bed. No, you don't. It creates genius, but look at the double-edged sword that happened. See? So once you unplug from the mind and you're able to kind of do this back and forth, because it's a back and forth play, you can learn a lot of things from your origins, but you cannot stay tied to it, to a core, to a point where your thinking space, which is further than the mind, you actually tap into the soul upon reaching that level. Your thinking space is not restricted by that core set of value which you identify with the flesh and your ideas of the past, your memories, which is all imagination. Because as said, once you change the memory from your current level of consciousness, once you change your understanding of that point in time, that level of consciousness from your current level of consciousness, the feeling changes, the memory changes, because you perceive it differently, and then you go on a whole different momentum. But you can stay stuck in you can stay stuck in the mind, you can stay stuck in the lifestyle of continuously reacting, chanting for racism, fighting, double thinking and double speaking, chanting about inclusion, but then saying, well, fuck those people because of whatever happened in the past, which is not even their current level of consciousness or the current level of consciousness as a whole. You can stay stuck in the mind. You can hold resentment. You can beat yourself up as well. Keep yourself locked in an identity which doesn't let you tackle on or play with multiple other kind of philosophies, which will complete it, complement it. Because hey, we're playing Babel's Tower game in 2020. We're still playing Babel's Tower, but a lot of people figured out, hey, wait a second, we gotta stop this shit. And information gets complemented with each other. Theories, philosophies complement each other now because people are talking. Sadhguru and a very really cool yogi. Sadhguru had a talk or various talks with neuroscientists. So we're talking about yogic science crossing over with Western science, and we're discovering new things from those interactions. Joe Dispenza is another one of those. Tony Robbins is another one of those. This interconnection is helping a lot of people because the knowledge is much more understood and accessible. And this is how you help people expand out of the mind. You don't yell at them. You don't shout at them like our parents did to us. You don't. Knowledge helps. Separation, which exactly happened back at that time of consciousness when it came to racism and slavery and all that. But even in the household, because if I beat you for not understanding or something that I understand with my level of context and granularity, which is a certain level of years compared to you, little child, well, there's no growth. There's no learning. It just fucks with your subconscious patterns and leaves you out, with those specific weights that you'll shove off and have your own moment of struggle to move out, And your struggle lessens as you pick and choose from multiple different practices and philosophy, because at one point something's going to hit and it's going to detach one of those little mind programs. You're like, oh, right, I was thinking like that for a large amount of time, but now I see it from a different point of perspective. Blinders off. And you're like, oh, but now I see how this applies to this, and how it applies to other people. Boom! Universal consciousness. You slowly tap into that. And then naturally, because of media and just having repeated an old pattern a certain long amount of time, you'll fall back into the mind. But that's okay, because it's always this aspect of playing with this to get a blend and being able to blend this aspect of being universal consciousness and soul, and then the mind, your own specific entity and version of this universal consciousness with your unique touches, your personality, the granularity of your experience oriented towards a good, okay? Towards a universal good, specific universal good. Because if you're going to go with good intentions and attack, it is not a universal good. You create that elastic band effect, or you run the risk of that elastic band effect, plus you ingest an amount of karma in your aspect of thinking that this was right and justified, causing your own enemy and keeping yourself in the struggle and in the fight, which keeps you in the mind. So play with this. Do not feel the same pressure we were placed upon learning and studying, okay? Do not feel that same pressure. This is not a diploma. This is not a set and dead set, 100%, 200% dead set accurate, solid in brick type of thing. This is not life. This is not the universe. The universe is quite malleable. And the more perspectives you ingest, the more you understand that. How is what becomes a very fun game of tasty nuances. And this is how you can kind of, instead of keeping stuck in a negative subconscious indoctrination of repeating racism, I can't do this because racism, you see the blockers that it puts on your subconscious, on your mind. I can't think of this idea because racism. I can't think of this career because this. I can't think of doing that because this. I can't think of going outside and having a friend from another ethnicity because this. You see the blockers? You'll shove that away. You'll completely shove that away. You won't stay stuck in that. And at that point, your growth and your connection to yourself and everyone just exponentially just goes, it just expands, and you will feel it once you take that step into that unknown, because if you're able to grasp it a bit also, as well as an aspect of courage of stepping into the unknown, what if I was accepting this aspect of universal connection? Go for the cheat sheet question. Boop, 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 boop. Cheat sheet, cheat code that shit. Ask yourself the question. This is the ultimate cheat code, okay? You ask yourself your own questions depending on your phrasing, but questions like, what if I already understood this aspect of universal connection? What if I already understood how to drop some of my subconscious blockers? What if I already felt what it felt without those subconscious blockers? If I had a subconscious blocker, what would it be? You know, if I noticed some of the habits and behaviors that I've had that were kind of locking me in, what would it be and how would I work out of it? Always having an exit question as well. Because you'll get the answer. You'll get the answer. You'll kind of hint on, clue in, intuition on it. Receive a bit of the soul telling you, hey buddy, look at this, you know, or you'll remember something. It'll be brought into imagination. And then you can just clear it. And you fast track that way. You fast track that way. It's nuts. It's fucking cool. Because after that, no more of that subconscious repetition. You can have a different repetition or subconscious repetition towards appreciating what you do, discovering more nuances in what you do, loving to spread what you do, and loving to receive the love of what you do. People loving what you do, people loving what you create, people loving what you bring out, you know, of your own unique expression, because you're all unique. Everyone on this earth, you're unique. The granularity of your experience, once you understand that, you will not find another person who lived the same thing. Not even with the same temperature. Not even with the same camera angle, okay? So it's unique. It is needed. It helps a person. Once you put it out, you'll impact and influence another person, which will influence another person. You start that cycle. And that focusing on that just gets you into continuous bliss. Upon you training your mind to focus on that, by repeating what you like about it. And hey, you can even get up to yogic level, you know, to a point where you'll put that same process onto everything in life. So you'll appreciate and you'll be more in the habit of describing what you appreciate about your environment, about how you feel, about what's going on with this person, about this person's product, about this person's music, about this person's game, about this person's attitude, about this person's motion and move. And when you do that, you integrate a bit of it, plus you remember it more commonly because you're talking about what you love. You're re-imprinting that instead of going for gossip, where you're imprinting what you don't necessarily like and what you don't necessarily understand to the granularity that you have no context about. You see? Train yourself to continuously get lost in the void and not focus on what you love and appreciating everything for the other path, you know? And again, you did not consciously choose that other path. This is where non-duality kicks our butts. You did choose it by your actions and what you've done and your thinking process, but you didn't choose it because it was unconscious. You were still in the mind. You weren't necessarily holding the controller, which is your soul, which is the real you. Well, and this kind of gets a bit paradoxical because you can kind of see it as a mind-body-spirit complex, but you need to understand that the soul is the controller, is your controller. The mind is your auto process. It's kind of like your various automatically placed processes in, throughout your lifetime and whatever you're going to rewrite, which will get you going in an automatic state of expectation, assumptions, moods, whatever you've repeated multiple times. That's where the mind will go. And then the body, which gives you a very interesting connection between the mind and the soul. Whenever, again, going back to the video and the feeling of separation, whenever you feel angry, you're the one feeling it, okay? You're the only one feeling it in the moment. When you feel angry, when you feel triggered and react, you're the one feeling it in that moment in time, okay? But that's basically the soul telling you, hey buddy, you're separating from yourself and the universe. And okay, we're getting a bit too deep into this, especially for this video, but upon you going further into this journey, you're gonna get how that works, and you're gonna get how that emotion is like a guiding system, which tells you, again, you're separating yourself from yourself in the universe and all, because we're all one. And you're gonna start understanding the whole all is one aspect of it, and you'll play around with the multiple interpretation from multiple philosophies and religion talking about that. Like, there's such juicy nuances in there which you'll have access to if you move out of the mind. If you don't, GG. Well, you might kind of get to a point where osmosis and will get you where you'll kind of see a lot of people happy, and you'll be like, what the fuck's wrong with those people being happy? And there's too many happy people around me. Gonna have to be happy, you know? Too many accepting people. I said I'd only accept the one kind of people, but not all the people. You know, like, eventually osmosis will get you. Happiness will get you. Understanding will get you. Focusing on your pure passion, love, and pleasantry, and passion for the love for the world will get you by osmosis. You know, because you'll start asking questions. Am I crazy? Is being angry no longer a thing now? Is being negative and shitting on people no longer a thing now? You know? It'll be fucking funny. It'll be great when you'll kind of spot people like that. It's kind of like tackling on our parents and trying to be like having those wholesome, those fun, playful, passionate conversations, and sometimes they just don't want to get into it, and they're like, no, I'm not gonna let that go. I'm not gonna give credence to this other artist. That's not part of the mindset that I like. I will not try that. You know, it's gonna be funny. So guys, I know it's been long, and this kind of knowledge needs to be kind of taken and ingested. Woo! Battery is messing with me. But play with this, guys. Play with this. Just play with this. Okay? That's all I can say. For now. More channeling is going to come in. And you'll discover more things on yourself. Just go. Explore. Please, explore. Multiple religions. Don't stay stuck in one thing. Please. The best way if you still want to at the core only help the black community, this will also be the best thing to do. Expanding consciousness. And indirectly, you're going to help other people too, so take the bonus. Later, guys. Have a terrific time. And if there's more questions, feel free to add in, comment, poke me on the Facebook page. More insights could come of this. I don't necessarily know if there's going to be another part. I may have to do, I think, yes, I need to do a French version, which would help. Not need. It would be preferable if I did a French version with the intention that I have to genuinely want to help people. I want to do a French version. So that's going to be coming up next for all you Frenchies. That's cool, guys. All right, kick some asses, guys, and play with this. Guess what? Just you taking this on, GG, you've won. It's not GG, you're forfeiting your life. No, it's GG, you've won. Because just taking this on, you're going to unravel, you're going to keep going deeper into the rabbit hole, and you've got this. Again, don't forget to use the cheat sheet question, asking yourself that question with particular phrasing, and look at what you're going to receive, all right? Cheat code! But it's our natural cheat code. It is our natural gift. But it's a bit of a cheat sheet. It's so cool. Later, guys, and kick some butts.